Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? Well, there is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, we've got the privilege of talking to Mike Scott tonight. He's an individual that's had a few interesting things happen to him down in Missouri regarding Bigfoot. But how's it going, Mike?
Hey, it's going real good. I just appreciate you having me on. Looking forward to the evening.
Absolutely. Well, Mike, let's get right into it. I know you've got some interesting things to share, so I'm going to go ahead and give the floor right over to you and share with us what you've experienced so far, if you don't mind.
Well, my journey with this started in December of 2019. That's as far as the journey of finding my first pieces of Bigfoot evidence. And it kind of goes back. Before then, I'm 58 years old, so I'd have been 54 probably at that point, somewhat around there. But I remember at age 12 checking out a book from the library and reading it called On the Track of Bigfoot. And that, and that stuff, that was published probably in the mid-70s. So that kind of covered things up to that point, what they knew, Jerry Crew and the footprints, Patterson Gimlin, things like that. And I thought, this is kind of cool. It's a cool subject. There's probably something to this, but it seems like everything is up in the Pacific Northwest. And I just left it at that. Then you get busy. You're playing sports in high school and going to college and getting on with your family and things like that. And totally ignored and forgot about anything Bigfoot. It never crossed my mind again until these cable TV shows started coming out. Monster Quest. That was one of the first ones I started watching. Finding Bigfoot, and you watch those shows, and they're made for TV. They're Hollywood entertainment, but then you're thinking that not everybody's lying about this stuff. There's got to be something to this. These guys really getting on TV and making these stories up, and so had an interest peaked, and then. When my youngest of two kids, my son, when he got through playing college baseball, and we were just a sports family, we were, daughter's swim meets, his baseball games, all that stuff got done. He wanted to continue to have a hobby that we could do together, and he suggested hunting and fishing and things. We didn't do a lot of that, because we were always doing the team sports and things. So I said, yeah, cool. Let's do that. And in my county, Cape Girardeau County, Cape Girardeau, Missouri is where I live. We're about 100 miles south of St. Louis on the Mississippi River. A big conservation area in the north part of the county. I said, well, that's public land. Let's go up there, get the hunt licenses, and do a little shooting, go up there and check it out. And for some squirrel hunting, and came across a set of footprints, December 2019. These footprints were 17 and a half inches long. They were about 8 inches at the widest part. They had about a 5-foot stride length. We saw about 4 or 5 steps. We saw right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. You could clearly make that out, toes. And it just floored me that I was looking at that. And my son even knew what we were looking at. You do the math. No, who has feet that big in December in Missouri that's going to be walking barefoot? Nobody. He's 6'6", I'm 6'5". We both wear size 15 shoes, and it just swallowed our boots up. And I'm like, it's got to be Bigfoot. But who would have thought right here? Who would have thought right here in Cape Girardeau County? I never would have thought that. Never would have believed that. And fast forward, that was December 2019. Well, what happened in March of 2020? COVID. They shut everything down. They closed my work down. I work at a high school. I teach high school. I'm athletic director at an area high school. They closed us down. You couldn't go anywhere. Everything's closed. They can't keep me from going to the woods. So I started going to that same conservation area over and over again and looking around, and every time I would go, I would see more Bigfoot evidence. And then bring a friend, get a couple friends involved. There's 3 or 4 of us now doing this. And we're going up there. You go up there, and then after a while, you as you see the evidence, you hear the whoops. I guess if you're there enough times, they kind of recognize who you are, and then they start reaching out, and making some kind of communications to let you know where they're at. This one's up on that ridge, that one's up on that ridge. Hey, I got 3 of them watching me right now. I better get out of here. Get to the car, leave. Curiosity, come back. After 2 or 3 times of that, I'm thinking, okay, they're not going to hurt me, or they would have done it. So you just keep doing a little bit more. And then we decided, hey, let's couple primitive campsites up there. Let's camp out, pitch a tent, stay overnight. And I remember the first the first few times we did that. You get all these, and we did that. We bought all the spotlights, the game cams, night visions, all that stuff, set up a perimeter of game cams, and we'd get nothing. And we get nothing. But we knew they were there because we'd hear them in the distance. And then as I started getting into these social media Bigfoot networks, you hear other people talk about maybe they've tried a little bit differently. So I told one of my buddies one time, I said, let's just put all the cameras up. Let's just put all that up. Let's just us and whatever comes in. Nothing light-wise but a campfire. And it was then when they started paying us closer visits. And that's when we started having some real cool moments and some interactions, and you communicate back and forth with one. There was one that I got to where when I would go out there for about a 6-month period, we would actually verbally communicate back and forth with each other. I think it was a female. She'd stay in the tree line. She wouldn't come out and expose herself, but we had that verbal communication going, and that went on once a month for about 6 straight months. And the communication would last sometimes 10, 15 minutes. And then, then she'd go on her way. And so we had some real neat experiences. And still, later on, I'll share my latest experience with it, which is just awesome. But the up there, and then I got to know some folks that had some stuff going on their property 2 counties away, and started working with them. And that's just been in the last year, in 2 or 3 months that we've been doing that. And I actually had my first good sighting at their place. My first good sighting was back in December of this year. And that's when everything that you've studied, everything that you've interacted with, everything that you've dealt with in 4 years now has finally come to fruition, where I'm sitting there looking in the eye of a Sasquatch at about 40 yards, and no mistake in what you're looking at. And we probably looked at each other for about 15 seconds, and I never felt any fear because I've been waiting for this for 4 years. I've been in amongst them for 4 years, and plus we were on the private property where the family has a relationship with them. So I felt like, this is cool. This is so cool. You've exposed yourself to me and let me see you, and I think this is so cool. And I just kind of told him that. And after about 15 seconds, he just kind of turned around and moseyed back into the woods. He probably had to be about 10 foot tall. The head and the shoulders were so massive. I'm 6'5", a little north of 300 pounds, and it was just, it were 3 times of me at the head and shoulders. It was really, really crazy.
So I have a few questions about the whole, it sounds almost like a habituation type deal going on there. A few counties over from where you're at, which I want listeners to realize that. So Cape Girardeau, Missouri is in the southeast corner. So you're very close to southern Illinois, Little Egypt area, correct?
We're real close to the Little Egypt area. The place that we research in North Cape County, the conservation area, is really right across the Mississippi River from the Big Muddy River. And everybody's heard of the Big Muddy Monster in southern Illinois. So, the Big Muddy, where we go, it's about 20 miles north of Cape, the north side of the county. And the Big Muddy is just across the Mississippi River. And then we're in the Missouri side, and there's plenty of Sasquatches up there on both sides of the river. So that's the other thing I found out is there are a lot more of these out there than people can imagine, because
exactly
just in my 4 years where we go in North Cape County alone, that one conservation area, I've seen every size footprint increment from 10 inches to 24 inches. I've seen 10-inch footprints, 11-inch, 12-inch, 13, 14, all the way up to 24 inches. And I can take anybody. There's 2 places up there. I can take anybody up there on any given day and almost guarantee we'll find footprints, because it's travel ways for them. And
wow, that's incredible. So the habituation area. So I'm curious right off the bat. So what kind of you said that they are having some kind of interactions, or is it a gifting type situation, or what type of interactions is this family having with the Sasquatch on this property?
Okay, those guys have got a farm. They've got a little, they grow some produce. They've got some greenhouses. It has started with them that Sasquatch was coming and raiding the greenhouses. They didn't know what it was at first, and they thought people were doing that. Well, we're going to get those people. We're going to set traps. Then they find out it's not people. Or it could be people, depending on how you view the Sasquatch. One of the young men with the family kind of reached out on one of the Facebook groups, like, hey, I got some stuff going on here. And a couple of Carter Bouchard contacted him. I got with him and they built a relationship with him and made my first visit out on their property about a year ago, January. And I suggested, in addition to what they have, because they learned to share their vegetation with the Sasquatch family that's on their, and I kind of suggested, I said, you got 2 options here. You can run them off and they can turn right back around and make your life miserable. Very much so. Or you could learn to live with them. And the neat thing was that the Sasquatch wasn't taking all their stuff. They were just taking portions of it anyway. And they still had a fruitful farm. And then I suggested, in addition to what they're doing, we set up a gifting bucket and try a gifting program. so, and then we started that last January, and I just get the bucket and put the bucket up there at the edge of the woods, there, and put apples in it and peanut butter, jarred peanut butter, things of that nature, and started getting some interest. Of course they really enjoyed the apples, and they didn't get apples at the farm. They enjoyed the peanut butter, but they would take here's the things we started noticing. They would take the peanut butter jar, take it back to the camp or wherever it is they stayed, and then when the peanut butter jar was empty and done, they'd bring it back and set it back in the bucket. And we'd put some of those little sweet and salty granola bars on there. They would tear open the wrapper, take them out of the wrapper, and then they would either put the wrapper back in the bucket, or they'd stick it up there in a nearby tree limb just so we could see it, so they're not littering the forest. And then we come back up and check, either them or me. We gather up the wrappers; they're all right there, and and properly trash them. They leave little glyphs for us. And one glyph was in the shape of a human stick figure, and had very positive interactions. Of course, I'd go up once every 3 or 4 weeks to fill the bucket and visit them. And they, I wasn't seeing them. They would see them. They would have the interactions with them. They worked the farm every day. And I think the oldest kid in the Bigfoot group would, and he was probably about 7 foot tall. He would come down and shadow him and watch him work the farm, and curious. And, they're working the farm and looking over their shoulder, and there's, junior Bigfoot or whatever you want to call him, about 20 yards away watching them. And this kind of stuff went on with them, and they got to where they were fairly comfortable with each other. But when I would go up, I wouldn't see him. I'd see all the evidence. And then went up, did a couple overnights, like just a couple night times, spent the night up over, but still didn't heard him, but then finally it was December when I was filling the bucket up in December is when finally the one exposed itself to where I could see him when I'm in that family. And one of the farm owners had seen him up there in the woods and was talking to him, and I said, "Do you see?" I'm finishing the bucket. And she said, "Yeah." She says, "Come over and take a look." And I went over and took a look, and sure enough, and she said there were the younger ones with him, but they had gone into hiding by the time I got over there. And he was, we just sat there and looked, about 40 yards away. And I said some real nice things to him. Said, "I hope you appreciate, the treats, and they're for you guys." And he just kind of swayed that head back and forth a little bit, and about 15 seconds, just turned, just kind of walked back in wherever the young ones went, I guess, following them back into the woods. So I guess he was coming to say, "Hey, thanks for the treats." I don't know.
So, there's been so many years that you were getting into the subject, and then you finally have a visual, sighting, which everyone wants to have that. And how did that affect you emotionally during that moment? What were you feeling inside when you're like, I'm actually finally able to look at one?
I just felt, my feeling was, this is so cool. And I have, at this point, it's been a 4-year journey for me to get to this point. Now, I had seen one evening that I know was a Bigfoot, but I couldn't it looked like a real dark shadow hopping from behind one tree to behind another tree at about 25 yards during the evening hours when it was almost, pitch dark. And I could see that. And then another time over in Madison County at the farm, I saw one peeking around a tree at about 70 yards, just kind of, you see the head pop I didn't even recognize it till I start seeing the movement, because they pointed out, yeah, there he is up there. There he is up there. Where I don't see anything but tree. Then all of a sudden you see the, boop, like a little bulge coming out, going back in. But never a good sighting to that moment. And it was that moment I thought, this is just so cool.
Was there anything that surprised you about what you were looking at? Any details that were like, wow, this is different than what I was expecting, than what I've seen in pictures?
I didn't realize, they call them Bigfoot for a reason. I've seen the prints up to 24 inches. This one's prints were about 20 inches that I've seen multiple times, which probably about 10 foot tall. And the massive size of that head, no neck going down into the shoulders, and the conical of the head was very exposed too. I just didn't realize the width and the size were just that big. It's just, even though you hear, 10 foot tall, 800 pounds or whatever, seeing it brings that to light that these things are really, really huge. and that's what, no flab on them at all. Everything is just solid body build.
So that's interesting. So are you, go into that a little bit more. So I'm guessing there was some hair on the creature, but yeah. Are you saying that you could see under the hair as well?
No, because it was in the shade of the forest. At about 40, I could see the dark hair, and I could see some of the facial features. I could, the eyes and the nose, that you can see it was kind of didn't have a lot of hair on that area, but the rest of it you just see, and he was on all fours at the time, and I could see him from about the chest up. So I didn't really see the legs or the length of the arms, but even on all fours, he was almost looking me in the eye, and I'm 6'5". And when he turned around and he stayed on all fours, I could see the back. I could see down. He had a little silverish spot on his back, which they always told me they called him silverback because of that. And I could notice that as it lightened up on the backside as he went in behind the. So that was, but it was just so cool looking at that, and and I didn't think. I thought, well, I just observed him. I didn't walk in toward him. I didn't, some people may have run toward him to try to get a better look. I thought, I'm going to respect the situation and appreciate the situation.
What's the closest you think they've gotten to silverback on that property, since there's a habituation situation going on?
The closest they got to the silverback is probably that close. It's his kid, the one that's about. He's probably about 8 foot tall by now, but they've actually had physical contact with him as far as reaching out, tapping the shoulder and things like that. He gets out and active with him and is playful with him, but
okay, that's actually something that doesn't come up. I can probably count the number of times that's come up on this show on one hand. Right. So you're saying there's situations in that where they are actually touching the juvenile, like tapping it on the shoulder? Or?
Yeah, like he'll come up if my buddy who's working the greenhouse, and he's a young adult. He's probably close to 30 years old, but when he's working the greenhouse, the juvenile, sometimes if he's getting wood or, he'll come up, sneak up behind him, tap him on the shoulder, and then jump back about 6 or 7 feet. And you turn around, there he is. It's
sorry, I misunderstood. You're saying the juvenile is tapping him on the shoulder.
Yeah. But the juvenile's about 7 to 8 foot tall, though. He's a good size, like a teenager. And he'll be inside the greenhouse and working the greenhouse at night. The juvenile will open the greenhouse door and walk in and, kind of look at him, watch him, and so he's had very, very close interactions.
So there's two ways you could take that. I mean, if I'm pretending I'm the guy in the greenhouse, it could either be, he's messing around. He's trying to prank me. He's having a good time, or he's saying, "Hey, I could take you out if I wanted to, but I'm just going to do a little tap on the shoulder, but I'm here," Oh, man.
Probably a little bit of both. I don't know.
Yeah.
They had one particular day, as he described it, he was in the greenhouse, and as he's come to exit the greenhouse, the juvenile was holding the door closed, like, somebody to prank you, going to hold the door closed and not let you out or not let you in. He says, I'm like, he says, so I give it a real hard push and I catch him off guard and I pop the door open and then he slams it shut and jams and smashes my finger with it. He goes, and I start screaming because I'm in pain. He runs off. I go take care of my finger. And then from the creek bottom, that we called it fool's gold when we were kids, those old rocks that had to look like the quartz on there and stuff like that. He delivers him a quartz rock as a I'm sorry gift the next day. So,
really?
Yeah. But
speaking of rocks, so you have quartz in the area. Do you have any other big deposit types of, or
mostly
limes of certain rocks?
Mostly it's a big limestone area.
Okay, cool. Not like granite.
Then you got the granite, probably over where they're at, there is some granite over in Madison County where they're at. They're about 65 or so miles to the northwest of me where these guys are at. But and there is granite over there, over in our area and closer to the river. It's mostly just limestone. And so they're over kind of in the foothills of the Mark Twain National Forest and the Missouri Ozarks over in that, they're kind of on the eastern edge of the Missouri Ozarks. And
I was just looking, I was like, I've got to see where Madison County is. And I was like, Mark Twain National Forest, dude. Yep.
So,
that's it.
And then where we're at is closer, you go up and down that Mississippi River and there's going to be Sasquatch activity all up and down through there on those bottoms.
Why do you think that there's so much activity in this corner of Missouri / Illinois?
I just think the river bottoms with the thick forests. You got Shawnee National Forest over there on the southern Illinois side, and then all the tributaries going into the river, up and down the river. The creeks and the sloughs and the smaller rivers. It gives any type of predatory animal a perfect habitat. You got water source, you got food source, you got plenty of thick woods covered, and it's a perfect habitat for if you're living off the land.
Absolutely.
Plenty of vegetation, plenty of game. To hunt and eat. So. You mentioned earlier,
so you're in the area of Murfreesboro then?
Yeah, we're right. Murfreesboro is probably across the river in 30 miles to the north, maybe, something like that. And
that's such a fun story from 1973. Listeners, if you don't know about the Big Muddy Monster, there's a great doc out. There's a great documentary out there. There's a great book. Now there's a festival. I got to get down there. I can drive down there. It's probably 7-8 hours from where I'm at in Iowa, but I hear it's a great one. But have you ever, if I was down there, I'd be like, what if like the same Bigfoot is somehow connected to like the stuff I'm researching? That'd be wild, man.
Yeah, are they the same? To me, I think there's just different groups, different clans. I think they got clans over there, they got clans over here. I don't think they're using the river to go back and forth or anything, but they could be. I don't know, but there's just, to me, the evidence shows that there's plenty of them in certain areas. And another spot over in Madison County that I've had some activity is another person's private property. And that's, we sat there, he and I sat there one night and, we had the eye shine of 3 of them, within 30 yards of us and just watching that. Somebody told me a few years ago, just, you don't have to go trekking through the woods. Just build you a fire, enjoy each other's company. Their curiosity, they'll come and check you out. And that has worked for me better than anything as far as getting the interactions.
Absolutely.
And
so let's say you were moving to a new area and you were like, I got to find the places. What are the first steps that you would take to try to figure out, like, what are the areas I'm going to start to look into to see if there's Bigfoot activity?
Well, what I do is I get on the Google Earth and look at the Google Earth maps, the topographical maps. And I look where there's water and cover. And if there's water and cover, you're more than likely going to find Bigfoots. Now, and you don't have to be too far away from the population. You can be, they're not always out in the middle of nowhere. And I'll give you a case in point. I started this journey. My sister got involved in it with me. She actually had a sighting on the road one night and has her own story. She did several of my shows when I did my podcast, Understanding Bigfoot. We put 37 shows out there. I hadn't done one in about a year. I'm just kind of don't know if I'll get back and do it again. I may just not. But she did several shows with me. But we had parents, we had family members told us, nah, you guys are crazy. Right? I'm sure you've heard that. But we stuck to our stories because we knew our stories were true, and we didn't care what they said. We were going to do what we're going to do. And we're going to believe what we know because we've experienced it. And I'd tell my brother, hey, come out with us. Come experience what we experience, and then, so this was this past summer. My parents are both 85 years old. They live up in St. Charles, Missouri, suburban St. Louis, 3 million population, metropolitan St. Louis, right? And Dad and I were going back and forth. We got a great relationship, and we were going back and forth, and he's razzing me about this stuff. I said, look, and I was due up to get up there and take him to a doctor appointment on a Monday, and I was going to come up on a Sunday. I said, I tell you what, there's a bicycle trail that starts in St. Charles and goes across to Kansas City on the Missouri River. They call it the Katy Trail. Very popular tourist, people ride the whole thing. They raid pipes of it. It's a recreational thing. It's super. And right there in St. Charles County, about 6 miles from where my dad lives, there's a conservation area, public conservation area down on that river called Weldon Spring Conservation Area. Katy Trail runs through there. I said, I'll tell you what, I said, let's go. Let's take a drive down to the parking lot there at the Katy Trail in the conservation area, and we'll just listen. Just sit and listen for the night and see what we hear. I had no idea. I hadn't had any other Bigfoot activity in that area except for a story that I knew from about 45 years ago. And we didn't even know it was Bigfoot back then. We just thought this guy's crazy. But we knew he was something that scared him, right? And so we go down there and we park and we're talking. The last cyclist, as it's starting to get dark, the last cyclist that gets done riding the bike on that portion of the trail gets in his truck, and when that truck pulls out of the parking lot, up on the ridge in the woods, we hear distinct 2 tree knocks. And my dad heard that. He said, that was 2 tree knocks. I said, yeah, it was. He said, maybe, my guess is it's signaling the rest of them in the woods that the bicyclists are gone for the night. The other 5 minutes go by, 10 minutes go by, we don't hear anything. Now, if that up there tree knocked and he's overlooking there, he knows we're still there in the car. But he knows we're not bicyclists, right? He's smart enough to know that. So I thought, well, I normally don't do this, but I'm with Dad. Dad's got expectations of activity. We're not getting activity. I normally don't do this, but I'm going to let out a couple whoops. That guy up there already knows that. He knows it's me whooping. I'm not going to fool him. I may not fool any of them, but I did it anyway. I normally don't do that. Normally don't have. So I give it a big old whoop, whoop, a couple of them high pitched. And after I did my second one, up on the ridge to the left of this, we hear a real loud, long, drawn out Bigfoot scream. Like you'd hear with the Ohio sounds, one of those. And it just set the woods up. We started hearing them all over that conservation area ridge, just yells, back and forth, back and forth. It sounded like a whole chorus of them, just within a certain distance of us. And it scared my dad. he got spooked. I thought it was neat. I thought it was cool because I've heard the same thing in Southeast Missouri on a few occasions, right? I'm like, they're here. They're here. This is so cool. And he's like, let's go.
Your dad's gone 0 to 60 in 2 seconds.
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
This is real.
And I'm like, what are you afraid of? They don't exist.
That's hilarious.
And anyway, I tell you, he'll downplay it to this day, but it was so much fun. And my sister, who lives in Texas, she was coming up a couple weeks later to visit him. She said, I got to take him out there. So she takes him back out to the same place, and he went and turned the motor off of the car. He went, you got to turn the motor off the car so we can hear you. I ain't turning it off. What if it won't start back up? So she probably brought him back, convinced him to turn the motor off, and then she started. They had some activity too, and it's like 2 times, So, but what that tells you is they're all over the place. You can look at the habitual area in the map, what it looks like, and you can say they're probably there. They probably are. And in this case, they're in a county, St. Charles County, that, probably has the entire county probably has a population of 750,000 people. So, they don't have to be too far away, and people recreationally ride that bike trail every single day without incident with the Bigfoot. Don't even know they're there, most of them. And
I bet they're just watching them all day long, though.
And they're just watching them.
Yeah.
They're people watchers. They I've had that with me on a number of occasions. It's just, that's the fascinating. That's like when I did the Understanding Bigfoot thing. I said, what do I want to call the show? I don't want to call it Bigfoot is Real. I know that. I don't want to call it Finding Bigfoot. I found him. Hey, let's try to understand what they know and what they're about. Somebody told me, he said, you're never going to understand Bigfoot. I said, then we'll always have another show to do or another subject to talk about.
Exactly. I bring this up every once in a while, but someone about a year ago was like, so you're going to start focusing on Bigfoot. Yeah, absolutely. Aren't you afraid that you're going to run out of people to talk to that have had stuff happen? I don't think so. And now it's like, no, never. I will never run out of people. It's intense all over the nation and the world.
You've dealt with this, Jeremiah, and I've dealt with it. You probably more so than me, where I've had guests on the podcast that I've done that said, finally, I'm able to get this off my chest to somebody who understands.
Absolutely.
And I've lived with this for how many years? We had a situation. I work at a high school. And I work at a high school. This is my second year at that high school. I'm athletic director there, and I teach a couple classes. And these kids are wonderful. And this high school is in Bollinger County, Missouri. Now, if you look at the map, Cape Girardeau County is there in the river. The next county over is Bollinger County. The next county over is Madison County, where I've had Bigfoot activity, right? So it's safe to say if Bigfoot are in Cape Girardeau County, Bigfoot are in Madison County, they're probably in Bollinger County too. They are. It's a rural, wooded county. But most of the people don't know that they are. Because and so these kids, they find out a new person's coming to town. He's not from there. He's going to be, athletic director, teaching classes. They get on there and they stalk you on social media. They find out this nutty guy's into Bigfoot. So, they start razzing me, and they had, I was doing podcasts, and I just told them, guys, I'm telling you. And this year, this is just we're still in March. This is this month. This is the first of early this month. One of our seniors, female student, going to be valedictorian in the class. She basketball player, over 1,000 points in the basketball team career-wise. Good. You're all-American kid, right? She says to me a couple of months ago, there's one thing I want you to do for me and a few of others before we graduate. I said, what's that? She says, take us out to the woods and show us what you know. Show us what you're seeing. Put up or shut up, Mr. Scott. I said, okay. So I got the school to let me they sponsored to let me take these kids out on a field trip. You remember the old field trips in school, right? You go to the zoo or go someplace that. So I had 11 students. I had 8 seniors and 3 juniors, 11 students, put them on a school bus. And since we're a small school, I also drive the bus. So drive them over to my conservation area in North Cape County, where I know at least the one thing I know I can show them is footprints. Right? Are you going to show us Bigfoot? Probably not. You're not going to see Bigfoot. they're not, they're not out. I said, I will show you evidence. I had my buddy, one of my research buddies, met me up there. He's retired now. He met us up there, joined us. And so we went out, and we weren't 50, 75 yards off the bus. And I spot the first track. And so I said, look at this, guys. Let's look at this. Now, it wasn't a perfect track, but you could tell. I said, now get your hands down there. You can see where the indention, barely, but there is an indention. See if you feel toes. They feel toes. Let's get the tape measure out. That track is 16 inches long, 8 inches wide, and they could see that's a track. I said, if this is one track, there has to be others. So you want to look 4 to 5 feet ahead, 4 to 5 feet behind. You may not actually see a good footprint like this, but you'll see where it stepped. There'll be an impression where it stepped. And then the students are picking it out. Hey, look at there. Look at there. He's right. Hey, looky there. Look at, and we saw 3 or 4 steps worth of travel. And then once I showed them what I saw, they went out and started looking like kids at an Easter egg hunt. Hey, this might be one here. Come look at it. Hey, this might be one over here. Come look at it. And so these kids are seeing, for the first time, they're seeing 16. This was only a 15-inch track. This one's 18 inches long. And they're saying, and they're getting excited because they're saying, they know that something is laying these, and these are awful big feet. and so they went up ahead, and we got to an area that I said, I'm going to walk on up the hill because I've seen some good tracks up there before, and they were going to stay along that little small creek bed. And my buddy was with them, and they were going up there. One of my students found a perfect, in the creek bottom, 17-inch print by 9 wide, toes down in there, that heel into the mid-tarsal break, everything's showing. I mean, good old inch indention into the ground. And I got to him finally. And I had thought, because I wanted to have them to have this experience, I brought a kit for plaster casting. I thought, if we find a good track, we're going to cast it. So I got the casting material, showed the kids, okay, follow directions, mix it up. Students mixed it up. Students poured it into the foot. One kid pulls the wallet out. He's got a little credit card. They kind of smooth it over at the top. Make a nice smooth top. And that track is sitting there in the ground, 17 inches long, 9 inches by the widest part. And I wanted to set up real good. By this time, they're hungry and they want to go get lunch, but I wanted to set up real good. My buddy says, hey, let's just do this. I'll come back tomorrow and get it. Let it get good. Because I was worried about, well, if we start taking it out of the ground, I don't want it to fall apart. We got a mile to walk back to the bus. And so my buddy goes back, gets it the next day, gets it out of the ground. This is just a perfect footprint that these students found, cast it, and made their day. And I'm getting it cleaned up. And what we're going to do is all the students that were on the trip are going to sign the flat part of the cast, and the school's going to let us put it on display in the display case in the lobby at school. Now, how cool is that? and these kids, most of them are 3/4 of a way or better to believing in what I'm doing and thinking this guy's not so nuts after all, because we saw this much. And so word leaks, spreads at school what we did. I got the cast in my classroom, and now you got other groups wanting to go out. Other groups, why can't? Well, you can do it. We just got to get a group. We got to, get org. You can be the next group to go. So, that's the kind of thing. Educating people, and we put that the SEMO Bigfoot Cryptid Research Facebook page that my friend Susan Perez runs here out of Cape Girardeau. We put the pictures, the story on that Facebook page, which and then Barb Hartman, another one of my co-hosts on Wednesday nights, or co-panelists on Wednesday nights, she put it on her No Drama Bigfoot Facebook page. And I had somebody comment on the SEMO Bigfoot page from just in the county to the north of us in Perry County, right along the river. This is so cool. I've been looking for a group to be able to share with this. I had a sighting when I was a kid, and I haven't been able to talk to anybody about it because my initial conversations were dismissed. You didn't see that. You were dreaming that, And so I reached out to her, and, and she and I are going to be talking soon. But I thought, yeah, that's why we do what we're doing, because there's so many people out there that have had that encounter and they've got nobody to share it with because their initial sharings were discounted.
Absolutely.
And you probably have experienced that. I experienced that. My sister experienced that. But I thought, screw it. I'm going to keep telling the story because it's true. And
yeah, that is so cool that you were able to take some kids out from the school and kind of open their eyes to what's really out there. But a question I wanted to ask you, you might have an interesting viewpoint of this because you have had that visual, face to face. It's a basic question, but so what do you think Bigfoot is if you had to categorize?
Well, you hear a lot of talk about that. Spiritually, I'm a Christian belief, and I believe, like us, that they are part of God's creation. Now, to what extent they were created, some people say, well, biblically, it's from the Nephilim and this, that. I'm not going to discount that, except for the only thing that makes me question that is the Nephilim were fallen angels and demonic and all that stuff. And these things have been nothing but nice to me. The total opposite of what you'd expect from demons, if you will. All my experience has been real chill. And I know people have been bluffed. My son was bluff charged once, but I know that's out there too. But to me, that's where I'm at with it. But I also know my buddy Tom Cantrell said that they're flesh and blood and something else. There's something else going on with them too. He says, I don't know exactly what, and I kind of agree with him on that because I don't have the evidence that they're, some people say, well, they're part of an alien group or they can just disappear into thin air. I haven't witnessed that. I'm not going to discount somebody else's story because people discounted mine. I'm just going by what I have learned in 4 years. But I do know on 3 different occasions, 3 times in my life, have I seen orbs. And all 3 of those times were in the presence of Bigfoot activity. But I've been in the presence of Bigfoot activity multiple times where there were no orbs. So, do they have something to do with each other? They might, but they don't all the time. So, I just try to, as an educator, I just try to be common sense about things.
Exactly. The orbs that you saw, were they a certain color or shape or size or?
Well, the one time, and I got a picture of it, of the orb. And actually, if you blow the orb up, you see the Bigfoot behind, right there with the orb. I got it on my phone. I could text it to you, but that was green. The other two times, the orbs were clear, like light bulb, like a white light, like white lights. So
it's really interesting. I've gotten more and more accounts over the last, I would say, 6 months. I think people are starting to get not as scared to talk about the orb thing. I think it might. I think people are starting to accept it more. I think back in the day, people wouldn't bring it up.
And it's like the mind speak, because I've communicated with them multiple times, but not through mind speak. I talk in English, and they will vocalize back to me. Sometimes it's a grunt, sometimes it's a little gibberish, sometimes it's just I might get an owl call back from them or something like that.
Okay, gotcha.
Or whoop or so, and then we'll go back and forth. I don't know that they know what I'm saying. I don't know what they're saying, but I can tell that we're on friendly terms with each other.
Exactly.
But I've got one of my research guys says that he'd had some mind speaking activity with them and told me what they said to him and told me what and I'm like, my first thought 4 years ago was, you're crazy. But I don't think that anymore, because I've talked to enough people that have had those experiences that I think there's something to that. But I don't think everybody has that experience. I haven't had that experience, but I've talked to enough people that have, and so, I'm not discounting it. And that's part of that. There's something else going on, I've had people that have been hit with the infrasound that have told me what that was like. I've never been hit with it. So I can't, and I was as close to, I had one outside my tent door one day, and we were no more than 5 or 6 feet apart. It was just a tent wall separating us. And that was interesting. that was 2 years ago, April. 2 years ago, April, we were camping, and my buddy Bill and I, and he had a friend who was a total skeptic. The three of us were camping, and we were in the tent, and we hadn't really had a whole lot. We were, getting in there for the night, and it had been raining and it had been cloudy. So the lighting was not good because there was cloud covers keeping the moonlight from being there. And Bill and I had both fallen asleep. And the first sound I heard was a foot crunching gravel. There was a little gravel drive where Bill had his truck parked. Uh-huh. And when I heard the foot crunch the gravel, I woke up. And when I woke up, our skeptical buddy was sitting up in his cot, and he was on high alert. And he looked like he was, and we stayed quiet. Next step crunches the gravel. Next step crunches the gravel. We had a tarp out in front of our tent because to keep it from tracking mud into the tent because it had been raining. And the next step is on the tarp. And the next step is on the tarp. So he's got 2 feet on the tarp. He is right there on the other side of the tent wall from us. I know what it is because I've dealt with it. This guy is just on high alert. He knows that something is out there walking around on two legs. It's pretty heavy footed. And I'm sitting there saying to myself, talk to it. Talk to it. Say something to it. But I was like, I couldn't. you know what I mean? I'm like, he's that close. I thought, I'm going to let him make one more move, and then I'm going to say something to him. And then next thing you know, 2-3 steps, he's back into the woods and gone. And I didn't. I choked. I wanted to talk to it, say something, see what it would react, how it would do, what it would, and I didn't do it. And the thing walked into the woods, and it was too late. And my buddy Bill's still snoring. He hadn't woke up yet. And so I asked the guy, I said, so what did you hear? He said, I heard a couple of branches break from in the woods that didn't, sound like somebody broke them. He goes, the next thing I know, it's messing with things in the back of the truck. Moving things around, checking things out in the back of the truck. He goes, then it started coming across the gravel. And I thought, that's when I woke up, when it started coming across the gravel. And then he had experienced everything I experienced. And I said, that was a Bigfoot. He came in to visit us. This guy's wild. Like, and of course, this guy went back to his way, and Bill will say, oh, he's putting it out of his mind. You say, no, I didn't experience that. That really didn't happen. But it did.
That's wild. Have you guys ever heard or experienced zipper noises down there?
Like unzipping tents?
Yeah.
I haven't, no.
Okay. Have you heard of that down there at all?
Well, we got a young man who is, he came to our group as a total skeptic, come to one of our meetings. Susan advertised these meetings. She'll have a quarterly luncheon somewhere. And he camped with us one night, and he had a little individual one-person tent that he set up about 20 yards from the other tents. And he had the strings on the tent, okay? The strings, said something was like picking the string like a guitar. Ding, 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 at night, overnight. And he said, because I thought maybe it's just the wind. Well, the wind's not going to do that, on those tent strings. And I said, it was probably a Bigfoot that come in, and because there's no other animal just going to sit there and do that to the string while you're in there sleeping. Based on the things we experienced and stuff like that, I said it was a Bigfoot that come into the camp and it was doing that. That's the closest that we've heard. I haven't heard anybody being a zip. Yeah, they will let you know that they're in the area. They'll do different ways. They'll do different things to let you know they're in the area. And so you can, like in my case, I'm like, should I unzip the tent and go out and see this thing?
Right.
And I'm like,
yeah.
In your mind, you're like, well, how will it react if you do that?
Yeah.
Will it feel that I'm being aggressive with it? I mean, I don't want to tangle with it, right? I'm not going to win that. If it feels I'm being aggressive with it. Is he coming in and doing this much, but he doesn't want me to, or do they actually want me to come out and have interaction? I don't know the answer to that at this point. And that's why that night, like I said, I choked. I didn't do anything, and let it walk off. But
And then you just, you just have that regret. Like my first time I went out in Iowa, and I was just so excited, and I was like, texting different people. I was in my tent by myself, and I was texting random people, and Shannon was like, you gotta do the baby cry sound just to see what happens. I'm not going to do the baby cry sound. And she's like, just do it. And I was like, nah, I'm not going to do it. And I regret, I wish I would have done it. Cause it's like but that kind of can set off a lot of things. That can set off actual predators as well. So maybe you want to be careful of that, but.
Well, that's why I try not to yell and do all that stuff. I try not to do that because you don't know what you're communicating. You don't know what else you're setting off, things like that. Bill, I mentioned Bill. Bill and I had camped on one occasion. It was just the two of us, and we were setting in for the evening we were hoping to have some good activity with the Sasquatches, and about some people pulled up to hunt coons. They had about 2-3 coon hounds, and got down into those, started going down into those woods, and they were in our vicinity, and you can hear those hounds yapping, and I thought, well, there goes our night. And I guess at some point into their coon hunt, we heard the loudest Bigfoot roar that we had ever heard. And I mean, this was your Ohio howl on steroids if you're there at the time. And we never heard another yap out of those coonhounds. And I was kind of getting worried. I thought these dogs, And then about 10 minutes later, you could hear the hunters throwing these coon dogs in the back of their truck, and then peeling out of the gravel and getting out of there. And I thought, I wish I knew who those guys were. I'd love to talk to them tomorrow and find out, and then my next thought was, I hope the Bigfoot doesn't associate us with being the coon hunters.
Right.
Because we're up there in the tent. We're vulnerable, right? So I'm thinking, you start praying that. Well, about an hour later, we hear from out, we're in the tent. It's, we hear, and this is instance, we hear a hoot owl, immediately followed by a little up-down whistle, and then some rock clicking. What sounded like rock clicking. Hoot owl, up-down whistle, rock clicking. Hoot owl, up-down whistle, rock clicking. And this is going on. And they're probably about 40 yards from the tent. And we're hearing that. And I said, Bill, I think they're talking to us some way or another. Bill's a good whistler, so when they got to the up-down whistle, he replied with an up-down whistle. Then the hoot owl and the rock clicker quit. They started whistling back and forth to each other. And this is going on, whistle, 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 whistle. And I said, and this is when I got the guts. I said, let's walk outside the tent. This is so cool. Let's walk outside the tent. So we walked outside the tent, and they continued. He whistled, he whistled, he whistled. They go back and forth. They're down there, and they're in the trees. And I'm thinking, just come out and show yourself to us. And it wouldn't do it. And finally, the whistling stopped, and okay, I guess they're not going to show themselves to us. So we go back into the tent, zip it back up, lay back down. And then once we're settled into the tent, behind us there's a gravel parking lot, and all of a sudden you can hear them walking across the gravel parking lot on the other side of our trucks. Step, 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 going off to where they're going. and they're incredible. They are incredible.
That's wild. Have you heard of any situations? You said something a while back, and it made me think of something. And so the question I have is, have you heard of any situations where Sasquatch has made people's lives miserable in your area or state?
Yeah. I'll talk about a couple of, like I say, this is a conservation area that we go to. And of course, it's surrounded by farms and people that just have property and want to be out in the middle of nowhere or whatever. And there's not a lot of population up there 20 miles north of Cape. And these guys, they'll come in and with their side by sides and that. And one couple stopped one time and was talking to us, and he sees me and he says, I've seen you up here before. Well, and we try not to let them know what we're doing, right? Yeah. And so finally, my buddy asked him, have you noticed anything strange, any weird activities up here? No. Okay. Well, they're so the guy leaves. He comes back about 30 minutes later. He says, I had a Great Pyrenees. I found him down in a hollow on my property, dead with a broken back. He said, you ask about things strange. He says, something would spook my horses down there at night. That Great Pyrenees, they're guard dogs, right? And he goes, he ends up with a broken back down there. He says he didn't get hit by a car because the road's just a little gravel road that nobody ever travels. I mean, your dog's not going to get hit by a car on a. He said it was, and it would have been down there in the bottoms. He goes, what would have done that? He goes, there's no teeth marks on it. He goes, there's no scratch marks on it. There wouldn't be a mountain lion. We do have mountain lions there too. I saw one a couple years ago. What would have done that? I said, probably Bigfoot. I said, because whatever the Bigfoot was doing, causing the horses to react, causing the dog to react, they thought they don't want their cover blown, so let's eliminate what's blowing the cover. Probably Bigfoot. They're out here. He didn't know that. And another situation, and my son was actually the first one to find the tracks that first day in December 2019. He's into hunting. He would go up to that same conservation area and deer hunt. And I remember this, and he knows Bigfoots are up there because we had interactions. But he'd still go up there and he'd deer hunt. And other people deer hunt. It's not like people don't, they're not up there killing hunters, right? And they know hunters are in the woods and when the hunting seasons are. He tells me, he says, hey, I'm going to a new place in the morning that I hadn't been to, but I think it's a real good spot to go. I said, why don't you, and he lived here in Cape at the time. I said, why don't you come over and get me? I'll go out with you and sit with you. And next morning, I get up. It's about 5:45 in the morning. I get up. I let the dog out, and I get a text digging on my phone, and I don't have my glasses on. Oh, Ramsey's on his way over. Well, he's a little late. He should have been over here 30 minutes ago, maybe. So I ignored the text and I started getting dressed. Well, then 5 minutes later, the phone's ringing. And I picked the phone up and I said, I'm just nonchalantly, where you at, man? And he's breathing heavily into the phone, and he's sounds real shook up. And he says, I'm up here in a field. I said, oh, you went up there hunting and you didn't come over and get me? I thought you were going to come over and get me. Dad, I'm up here in a field. I just got chased out of the woods. I said, chased out of the woods by what? He says, you know what? I said, you should have come and got me. Well, what would you have done? I said, I don't know. I said, but he's so I said, I tell you, he's what? I said, come home. I said, we'll go get some breakfast, talk about this. Then we'll go back up and check things out. And the area that he went when we got there, there was a game trail, perfect deer, game trail. And this area had two arched, long, thin trees arched kind of over the game trail. And, they'll do those tree arches, and I don't know if it was just a sign like it's a good spot for us, whatever. I just theorized it as he went to hunt that morning where they wanted to be, and they didn't want him there. And he had a little spotlight headlamp to get into his place at pitch dark, and he couldn't see the Bigfoot. There probably were maybe two of them. They growled, screamed at him, broke trees, shook trees, chased him, bluff charged him. He couldn't see. He didn't fire his rifle. And I've told him, don't shoot unless you absolutely have to. I said, everything I researched, they will let you leave the area. Just leave the area if you run into something like that. I said, everything I researched, they'll let you leave the area. As soon as he got to the field, they left him alone. As soon as he got out of the woods into the field, they left him alone. And we went back to the spot. I saw a couple of 18-inch footprints in that area too. That I spotted. I said, yeah, you were wrong place at the wrong time. And then the next time he calls, he goes, I really want to hunt that field back there. He says, but he said, will you go with me today? I know you're not afraid of these things, and I just feel better if you went with me. Yeah, I'll go with you. But he had that experience. He didn't like it. He didn't want to have anything to do with him. And so
yeah, a lot of accounts I take it almost sounds like they want you out of a certain area, or they just want you out of a certain area, and once you get out of that area, they'll kind of just leave you alone. Wow, that's wild though. Have you had any conversations or connections with up here we call them DNR officers or forestry workers or law enforcement officials about Bigfoot?
Yeah, Missouri Department of Conservation. They're field agents. We were up there one night. We had a little, they got two little primitive camp areas up this conservation area, and we up there. And this is in January. My goodness, a few years back, and got a fire going. Just spitting snow, and got a tent. We were camping, and there was four of us up there at the time. I think three of us were going to camp. One was going to go home when he felt like it. And we were just up there talking, and a game warden making his rounds stops, and it comes over to check us out. Starts asking questions. He's got to find out, are we up there do we mean no good? Or are we up there? And it was during COVID. And I finally said to him, I said, look, we're not hunting. We're not, and nobody was really getting drunk or anything like that. I said, we just come up here to get away and be somewhere where we can just sit down and just visit with each other without having to put a mask on, without having to worry about social distancing, without having to do any of that stuff, just to kind of get away and just chill and visit with each other. And he's like, oh, okay. He says, he says, I feel like, though, I probably better say something to you, though. He says, there could be, because I don't have firsthand knowledge, but there could be Bigfoots in this area. Missouri Department of Conservation.
Okay, hold up. So did he know you guys were Bigfooters when he said that?
Nope.
Oh,
yeah, no,
snap,
we didn't mention
dude.
we didn't mention what we were up there doing.
Oh,
We didn't want him to know. I was like, we just was someplace we go visit with each other without having to put a mask on and social, work, but just try to be normal. And when he said that, I said, "What did you say?" Oh, I don't have firsthand knowledge, he said. I'm just telling you from some things I've heard, there might be some in the area. Just beware. And then my buddy says, that's why we're here. That's what we do. And then, okay. So I said, so I showed him some pictures on my phone of some footprints I had. This one here, I took that picture 300 yards right over there down by that old barn. This one here, these were cast over here on the other side off the boat ramp, different things like that. He's like, whoa. Yeah. Okay, you got the evidence. Well, we've exchanged contact information. He and I have. I've got his cell number in my phone, and he's got mine. And they're okay with us going up there and researching. I sent him a text most recently of this plaster cast our kids did. Told him what we did, what we found. He's like, that's awesome. And then we had another conservation agent. He said, he goes, if you want to check out other places, he gave us a couple other wildlife areas in southeast Missouri. You can go there. He goes, they're there too.
dude.
Now, the state of Missouri says they don't exist.
Well, of course they do.
The narrative of the Missouri Department of Conservation is it's a mythological creature that does not exist. But these two field agents say, oh, yeah, be careful. And the one guy even said to me, he says, he goes, it floors me that you guys actually spend the night out there in your tents knowing what's out there. And I told him, I said, they have not been harmful to us. They've showed us nothing but peacefulness. And So
that is awesome that you've got some guys on the inside like that are on a talking basis with you. That's so cool.
But these Sasquatches, they are very disciplined. They got a sophistication with their units, call them clans or family units, whatever you want to call them.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I'll sit up there at that parking lot. I sit in that parking lot during deer season. And, the firearm deer season, which is, state holiday, probably in your state, my state, right?
Yeah.
And when the hunter comes out of the woods onto the gravel parking lot, about 70 yards off the way, you hear, whoa! 10 minutes later, next hunter comes out, whoa! These hunters are oblivious to it.
Oh my God.
They act like but you have a Sasquatch watching the parking lot. Hunter out. They know exactly how many cars are parked, how many people are down there hunting, when the last hunter gets out of the woods, and when they can go start roaming. That's how sophisticated of a system they've got going. And if they've got it going in Cape Girardeau County, they've got it going all over the country.
Absolutely.
That's how they thrive, and that's how they thrive and survive, and that's how people hunt without knowing they're out there.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of what the Olympic Project out in Washington says. Chris Spencer, Shane Corson, they say that you're going to catch a lot of stuff when you get right out of your vehicle. So you better have a sound recorder going, because that's when you're going to hear like, oh, they're back again. You know, it's crazy, dude.
You know, and they've got their, what do you call them, day watchers, whatever you want to call them, that are positioned in certain areas, and you know, and they're going to keep an eye on things. But they've got that going on, and they have learned to coexist with the hunters, and that's why they're, you know, and I tell the hunters, well, like my son, I said, you're not going to shoot your way out of it unless you absolutely have to. I said, but at the same time, they know that you've got a gun, so they don't want you to shoot your way out of it. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. To the side, if there's a conservation officer, DNR, or whatever, you'd be labeled in your state, and you know about Bigfoot, or you had an experience and you want to reach out, you can reach out to me, bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Even if it's just to chat off air and off record, that I have no problem with that. I talk to a lot of people off record. But Mike, have you heard of any situations where could be like a Bigfoot related to like a missing 411 type thing, or like it could have been responsible for a person that was missing or anything like that?
They had a situation about 1.5 years ago down here in southeast Missouri where a deer hunter went missing. And he was from Sikeston, which is 30 miles south of me, but he was over in the Mark Twain area, over in east, probably west of Poplar Bluff, down there around Current River and in that area. And he went missing, and they found him dead a couple days later. When he went missing, here's what's strange about this. They searched the area and they found his rifle, and he wasn't there. When the next day, as they're searching the area, his body was back at the place where they found his rifle. And a lot of people, you know, speculating, Bigfoot got him, Bigfoot got him, Bigfoot got him. And my theory on that was, I don't think so. I don't know what got him. He may just had a heart attack and die. You know, I don't know what caused his death. Something may have taken him somewhere, because he wasn't there where the rifle was at. I don't know why he would have left his rifle to go, you know. And when they found the body where the rifle was the next day, my guess is that possibly a Bigfoot brought him back to that spot, knowing they were going to look, you know, that's an area they were looking. Because the last thing the Sasquatch wants is a bunch of law enforcement officials scoring through their territory, I would think. So I'm thinking, my theory is they brought the body back. There's your body. I don't know what caused it. Maybe they did. Maybe they did. Maybe he was ready to shoot. I don't know if it was Bigfoot that got him or not. I hadn't heard all the details since then on that. It's been kind of hushed up.
Right.
But so it's sketchy, you know. Nobody really knows for sure, but somehow that body got back to where that gun was at, and it wasn't there the day before.
That's a tricky situation for sure. You hear in Oklahoma a lot of, there's a few instances of, Bigfoot trying to get into houses or becoming extremely aggressive. Is that a thing that you guys have to deal with down in Southeast Missouri ever?
I haven't heard of that. No, I have heard knocking on the walls, knocking on the windows. I had a lady on one of my podcasts. She's from over in the Springfield area, north of Springfield, and she said that there's one that, I mean, he's at her bedroom window every night between 2 and 3 in the morning, tapping on it.
Man. Whew.
I said, "You're not going out to see what he wants?" She goes, No.
No. Time to put
She goes, "This goes on
cams.
She goes, "This is every night." I said, "Put up perimeter game cams. They'll stay away from there."
Yeah, they'll be out of there.
I've heard of that. That things like that, peeking in the windows, knocking on. I haven't heard of one trying to get in the house though. Not a personal story from anybody.
Gotcha.
I've read some encounters. Encounters where maybe they perhaps did in that. So even over at the place where I go in Madison County, they've gone up to the house. They haven't tried to get in the house.
So they've gone up close to the houses in Madison?
they've been up to the porch, but they haven't been in. They haven't tried to get in the house or been in the house.
So they're like getting up to the porch, but not quite crossing that point of no return because they know
not crossing that.
That could happen someday, but man, that's wild.
Because they've had gifts left for them on the porch right there outside the door.
Oh, really?
They come up and leave a gift in return for the food they're getting or something else. So
exactly. Do you know anything about a place called Marley Woods down in Missouri?
Place called what?
It's called Marley Woods.
Marley Woods?
Yeah, it was just shot in the dark. It's Skinwalker Ranch out in Utah.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
So supposedly there's a version of that somewhere in Missouri where it's like a lot of UFO stuff, but also some Bigfoot type things.
It would have to be over in the Ozarks, I'd guess. Although,
yeah, I would guess too.
Yeah, we I had a guy that's he's doing a documentary on the this Grand Tower UFO thing from about 50 years ago over in Southern Illinois, which is a big buddy area across where we research, and we saw what I'm just going to say it was a UFO because we couldn't identify it as anything else in the sky one night when we were up there.
Wow.
And that thing was doing all kinds of things that aren't known to any aircraft that we know anything about. And so he'd found out and he wanted to know. I couldn't. He was down doing some interviews. I was out of town when he did that. But he's putting his documentary together. My buddies, I think, interviewed with him. But I did talk to him on the phone. I said, "That's what I saw." I can't tell you that it was related to aliens or not, but I did see something in the sky that was not a normal thing in the sky. And so, but that stuff
whole
is
area.
Yeah, that stuff is, and if, like I said, if Bigfoot is real and Bigfoot is in the abundance that they are in this country, which I believe if they were recognized, there's more than enough. They would not be on an endangered species list.
Uh-huh.
And nobody knows about that, then I'm not going to say those other things aren't real. There's no telling what's out there. So
I got one last question for you. You're hearing a lot of accounts and stories in your corner of Missouri. Do you ever hear any accounts or sightings of non-Bigfoot creatures in the area?
I haven't heard anything related in our area to Dogman. Probably the closest thing related to that. Well, I mean, what's his name? Put out a documentary recently. My friend Miguel with Sasquatch Theory about
he's a great dude.
A dog man sighting over to the west of us, Mark Twain area again.
Mm-hmm.
somebody reported a couple years ago, and they described, and this was like right in Cape Girardeau. What they described as far as the creature is probably the closest thing we would call it would be the Mothman.
Really?
Big old Batman type thing flying around, and they said there were 2 different sightings within about a month of each other in the Cape Girardeau city limits on the outskirts of it. And I'd heard about that, but didn't follow up on it because, but who knows?
And how long ago was that? You said a few years?
That's probably about 3 years ago, okay. Probably. I mean, that's probably about 3 years ago. Wild. I hadn't heard anything since then, but I did hear 2 in the same region within about the same month of each other. And I didn't know, I didn't get any names. I just heard about it. So, I thought, I'm diving into Bigfoot. I don't have time to dive into everything. And
that's the thing, right? When you start focusing on a thing like Bigfoot, it's like you don't have time for anything else. I don't have time. Yeah. And, I get it.
And so.
Get it. Mike, it has been a really fun time chatting with you. You are a wealth of knowledge about Bigfoot in general, and especially in your corner of Missouri. Such a fun time. So thank you for coming on.
I appreciate that. I appreciate you inviting me. I know we first contacted about 7 or 8 months ago about this, doing this, and finally got together. And I've enjoyed my time. I've enjoyed sharing what I've experienced, and hopefully your audience gains a better understanding as well. Hopefully they enjoyed it. So
absolutely. Do you mind taking a few minutes how people can? If there's any way to keep up to date with what you're doing, how to contact you, if they have reports in your area, the Cape Girardeau County, Missouri, all that good stuff.
Okay. My email address is real easy. It's all one word, understandingbigfoot@gmail.com. I am with the Facebook page. I'm on Facebook as Mike Scott. I'm on Facebook. I'm a part of the SEMO, Southeast Missouri SEMO Bigfoot Encrypted Research Group on the Facebook page. They're welcome to join that and get on that. And they kind of keep up with what's going on in Southeast Missouri, and they can contact us directly through that as well. Those are the easiest ways. I hop on the Grizzly is on the Hunt podcast on Wednesday nights, most Wednesday nights at 8 o'clock, and on his channel as a panelist, and so I'm out there.
Love it. Good stuff. Well, Mike, thank you so much for coming on
today. No, thank you. I really appreciate it. You got a great show, and I'm glad I got to be a part of it.
Just wanted to take a few minutes to say thank you to you, all my listeners, for listening to the podcast. Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's the list. Number 1, encounters from Franklin County, Texas. Number 2, encounters from the entire state of Iowa. Number 3, encounters from Oak Ridge, Oregon, or the surrounding area. Number 4, any individuals that know about Bigfoot being flown off after the Mount St. Helens eruption. Number 5, individuals that have had a Bigfoot encounter while in the military. Number 6, those that have had a Bigfoot encounter in the southern New Hampshire or north central Massachusetts area, including Franklin County, Massachusetts. Number 7, individuals that have had a Bigfoot encounter in a Bible camp or Boy Scout camp setting. Number 8, individuals that have had Bigfoot try to enter their house forcibly while they were living inside. Number 9, individuals that have actively have a Bigfoot living on their property. And lastly, any sightings that are in the Ouachita National Forest area of Oklahoma. or Arkansas. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it. I'll see you back next time, listeners. Sasquatch Summerfest this year, July 11th through the 12th. It's going to be fantastic. July 11th through 12th in Green Waters Park in Oak Ridge, Oregon. And listeners, if you're going to go, you can get a 2-day ticket for the cost of one if you use the code BFS, like Bigfoot Society, but BFS, and it'll get you some off your cost. Priscilla was nice enough to provide that for my listeners. So there you go. I look forward to seeing you there. So make sure you head over to www.sasquatchsummerfest.com and pick up your tickets today.